the tools of mindfulness, or what mindfulness gets you to take away the stress off of yourself of trying to be in charge of all the things all the time, right?
In a world that often pulls us apart, More in Common brings us back to what matters. Hosted by Gerren Taylor and Keith Richardson, this isn't your average podcast. It's a challenge to think deeper, question louder, and grow further. At More in Common, we work with NFL teams, tech companies, and professionals across industries to improve communication and foster compassion. And with a focus on emotional intelligence, we aim to bring a wealth of experience to help you navigate the complexities of human connection. We've never been more connected and yet more isolated. We want to explore the roots of that tension and offer a way back to what we all need: real human connection. Enjoy the show.
Other than trying to catch us slipping.
Back to back attire, no change. I like that.
Do you?
No, I do. I don't care.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like, it's Fobody's Nault.
Listen, if you knew the secret about Jeopardy and how many episodes they record in a week.
Oh, I know, right?
Yeah.
It's all about batch recording, wardrobe changes.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Listen, I told you, don't look at the Wizard of Oz.
We just don't wardrobe change. That's all.
You don't want to know.
I think that's what I've always appreciated about the podcasts that we have put out there for, God, I mean, it's 8 years that we have, or since we put out our first podcast when Rodney and I were hosting. And there's this mentality that we always try to embody, is that, like, so often we hear from how the most successful people achieve success, right? Like, this is the meritocracy of the meritocratic ideology. And I'm not going to get into the whole space and time, but we actually tend then have a cognitive bias that's associated with this idea that we can all achieve where there are only few spots. And then they say, this is all you have to do. But what don't we ever see is all of the people that give it the effort, doing all of the things that person did or those people did, and not achieve that. We actually don't see that. So this goes into we've talked about this before, base rate fallacy and our inability to process statistics real time. We process stories. That's how we pass things down from time to time. And like, for us, we're not huge. We have a decent following, but we're just on the journey and we acknowledge it, right? We may fail. We may fall apart. We may not succeed, but here we are in this moment, just being a part of that journey and acknowledging, like, I'm not faking it until we make it. I'm not pretending that we are something that we're not. We just are here in this moment, talking about the things that we experience and have perspective on in order to help build better connections and community going forward. And hopefully people learn from it. And then hopefully it grows. Would love to see it grow. Would love to, be sponsored and, make money doing this. That would be killer, right? Don't know if we'll ever get there, but maybe. But I think a big piece of that is this idea of staying in this moment, right? Not thinking so far ahead. Like, and this ties into last week's episode around navigating that emotional struggle where it's like, I want to get there. I want to get there. I want to get there. How do you manage your space? Like, this, I would say, falls into the crossover of mental health and emotional health.
Yeah. And
stay present. Like, how do you think about that?
Man, I love this question. And usually I'm the one doing the segues, but that was
amazing.
I like that.
Great. That was so good. Made it up on my own. I made it up right there on the spot. Like,
My guy, let's go. No, I really do. I think about this a lot because it is so important to the overall philosophy of what we do, but also how approach many things, many pursuits of my life, my serial entrepreneurism, my unwielding optimism, and my ability to create uh, is about being in the moment, and it's about treating kind of every moment as a gift, and trying to remind myself there's no yesterday and there's no tomorrow. There's right now. Um, and seeing where that takes you and letting that adventure kind of unfold as you get into it. I think it's part of the reason why when I hooked up with More in Common in general, I saw so much overlap in how I wanted to be, how I see myself, and what this does and what we talk about here. Because the tools of the check-in, the ability to be emotionally aware, to be open and to listening to more, to engage in things with curiosity, all undergird that idea that you should be in this moment. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, and you should be in this moment because that's where life is. That's where the learning happens, and that's where we get the lessons I think that we're supposed to learn along the way. So I think overall for me, it's hard, obviously, like all these things we talk about, right? The noise in life in general, the distractions, the dinging and the donging. I mean, I don't even think your phone's on Do Not Disturb right now, Keith. Jeez,
It's
probably not.
not, but
It's
you keep
probably
hearing my
not.
computer going
I keep
off.
hearing
Like,
Teams
yeah, you keep hearing
notifications.
Teams and email. Like, there's always stimulus, right? Like, it's
There's always
always
something.
stimulus. Yeah.
Um, but I do think that the wisdom of thousands of years tells us that mindfulness is key in some ways, and that we should be practicing that uh, as our little human lives progress.
Well, I think,
Something reptilian brain.
yeah, there's been um, so much in the last decade that has been published, research articles, and there continues to be more and more research done. Um, like Joe Dispenza, who has these massive retreats, and there are researchers who tie EEG monitoring um, mechanisms and tools to participants to just see how the brain is reacting to these meditative states. And like this research just continues to plug along. And so I think what ends up happening, even for me, I'll talk about my journey on it, but I'm curious, like, is this academic mental approach to mindfulness, what's the journey been like for you getting to a place where you can be present and like be here now, not here tomorrow or here yesterday?
I do think it takes practices, like habitual practices of timeouts, of breathing. Um, that I definitely find that because it's all connected to your parasympathetic nervous system, mindfulness, and your state of being in that sense, right? So sometimes that means doing breath work. Sometimes that means box breathing, which is a form of breath work. Um, Things like that, I think, help me. Um, but I don't know. I feel like in some ways my connection to mindfulness, and though I obviously believe in science and read and subscribe to what we know, I believe that my personal connection to mindfulness does transcend kind of that sense of modern science's take on it and the wellness movement's take on it, and more
It's
about
the
the
spiritual
spiritual connection,
connection.
the
Yeah.
emptying your mind, the being open to the world, to the sounds of nature, to the emotions of the world around you, so to speak. I know that emotions of the world around you is a very loose term, but I do think that you feel tension in the air. I do think you feel relief in the air. I feel you feel joy in the air if you're sensitive enough to be open to it.
Dude, I think there's a great example is obviously we have children. So this is a having children perspective. If you don't have children, you might not, this doesn't necessarily land for you, but the idea of it, children are just a mirror to this because they're there all the time, right? Um, I was just talking to my wife about this the other day. She's like, I do think our kids reflect your emotional state. So, like, if I'm down, my kids are crankier, they fight more, they're irritated. If I'm in a great mood, they play more. They like that they're not consciously aware of necessarily of that energy shift in the air, but they feel it. And I'm more of the emotional center of our family. So when I shift, they feel it. To your point, right? It is there is a that spiritual energetic connection that we all exude. It's like when someone's desperate, and this is one of my favorite examples. When someone is desperate, even though they are doing their damnedest to not come off as desperate, you feel it. Maybe it's just the use of certain adjectives, right? This isn't like they're just the way their body language is and your past experience all is coming together. And it's like, I know you're doing a great job, but you're kind of desperate right now. And we don't like it. We generally don't like it when other people are desperate for things that we have. Um, I think maybe there's a relationship shift that needs to occur there, but we're not here to wax about that. So I get where you're coming from. Um, I get where you're coming from. I think it's been an interesting journey for me to get to a place of presence. I'll share that, and then I will have a question because I look back at just generally the society that I've grown up in. When you think about in school, you're always thinking about summer, right? Like, when is summer going to be here? When is Christmas going to be here? Oh, I'm going to be second grade. Oh, I'm going to be in third grade. Oh, I'm going to be in high school. Oh, I'm going to drive. Oh, I'm going to be able to drink. So like we are trained to think about the future and we're socialized to think about the future. And we love to reminisce and talk and we think a lot about the past as a result in some ways, and in other ways that tends to be the things we talk about. Do you remember that time? We have the tendency to think more positively about the past than we do about the present. There's a cognitive bias called declinism. We have the tendency to think things are falling apart around us more now than they ever have been. Even though if you really, really think about it, like I like to say, just imagine being in 1862, the Civil War, like waking up on Monday and thinking, boy, my neighbor might shoot me today, legitimately. And then on Tuesday, like we think about that period of time. So, we had the 14th and 15th Amendment and, slavery was ended. And, oh, great. Yeah, but that happened over a period. Like, imagine waking up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and none of that shit had changed yet, right? Like, you're right in the throes of it. Like, it's hard, but we tend to think back in the past. And it's like, when I was a kid, our formative emotional years, like, oh, that was a great time. Was it right? Like, and so as a result, we tend to not be present. And that is very much my experience for 35 years until I was intellectually introduced to the idea of mindfulness
Mm.
by Dr. Mike Gervais. I talk about him all the time.
I
He's the
think
one
you
that
should
gave
send
us
him a
the
letter.
Oh, I did after the three things
Did you?
episode. I tagged him in our post. Yeah. I've
Good.
thanked him many times for the influence and
Shout
impact
out,
that he has had to
Doctor.
Dr.
We're
Mike
gonna get
Gervais.
Doctor Dre on this.
I would love to have him on. Like that would be so awesome. Just sheer spend a half hour thanking him for all of the work that he's done. But I get into that, and then I start reading Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, and I remember like talking to Rodney about this, and Eckhart talks about it very philosophically. It's like when asked the question, but how do you get to the now? And he will just say, do it, right? Like just be there. And I remember it was like a 2-year journey of reading his book multiple times, practicing meditation so I could see the monkey brain get distracted, right? And like pull it back into the moment, doing all of that work to get to a point where it was like, oh, I get what Eckhart's actually saying. Because I resisted it. I'm like, yeah, but I like reflecting on my memories. I like planning for the future because that's what I was comfortable with. That's what I've known. And like that journey for me has been actively training it, experiencing it, and realizing, oh, all I need to do is be here now.
Yeah.
And then I just remind myself sometimes, it's like, hey, you're too far into the future right now. Come back. Or if I want to be in the future, I'll be in the future. If I want to be in the past, I'll be in the past. But I tend to be intentional about it instead of. So I guess that leads to my question for you is like, how do you actively practice it to get to that place where it is stable in the moment?
Why I think that's a wonderful. Thank you for sharing your journey, and really good like tools along the way. Right. I think that's important. Kind of how you're introduced to it is how you relate to it in some ways.
Because
Um,
I'd like to interject because this thought just came into my mind because I do hear from people, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who out there resonate. I can't turn off my brain,
right.
right? Like that will say I can't meditate because I can't turn off my brain. I can't meditate because um for whatever reason. And I would argue that you've just trained your brain to not turn off. So the act of meditating is a training mechanism over a long period of time to teach your brain to turn off, right? That's it. So
Or
it
at
might
least
take you
just to be
two,
in
three,
receive
four
mode,
years.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, back to my question is like, how do you practice it today?
Well, I think that lucky enough, and in some ways, I still have memories of very early on YMCA karate classes where that was part of
Mm.
end of our sessions was meditating. Even and you're 4 or 5, 6 years old, so it's not a long period of time. Um, but just having to sit and at first it's guided and then they let you go a little longer and a little longer, but then taking those tools later on in life and seeing again the connections between what everybody's talking about, right? And philosophy, I think, is another great thing because you start to wonder like how did they even begin to think about these things. And it's the time that you spend alone with your brain where you process these questions and these thoughts. So I think between making those early connections to it and then kind of having that reinforced by other ideas through life experience, for me it didn't have to come necessarily as this like later revelation. It was always sort of part of things that you're supposed to be doing. One of the earlier things that we talked about on this show is like you're taught these tools and then like you practice them and then you forget them and you come back. But it's like riding a bike. I feel like in some ways the earlier you learn it, the earlier it's plugged into you, the easier it is to kind of come back to it when it's indicated time for you to do so. Because like I said, none of us are perfect at these things. But it does inform why I believe, without necessarily like academic training in certain things, about the power of positive self-talk, about how to break negative cycles of thinking, about how to not put too much on it. We were talking earlier about, not telling folks about stuff until it's done, or not kind of getting too advanced, to let things develop in their natural form, and to know that I'm not in control of them, right? That those fundamental parts about the tools of mindfulness, or what mindfulness gets you to take away the stress off of yourself of trying to be in charge of all the things all the time, right? To take the fight or flight situation, the again, your limbic system, take your tension level down when your emotions are acting a certain way, because you're worried about future outcomes, because you're worried about, oh, this happened in the past. No, man, like sometimes every moment is its moment, and you have to remind yourself sometimes of that.
Dude, I think what you are like that like spiritual experience, I think it's so awesome because what you're talking about is in essence, why get there? Right? Like why put in the effort to get there? Because I mean, you said so many great things, but that big is to eliminate the stress and strain of every single day, to get out of. I mean, we talked last week about like just the emotional state that we're both in, and it's being able to recognize when it's good. Like the last 2 days, I've had really good starts to the day, but really poor finishes to the day. Now, I could look at the whole day and think, boy, that was a bad day. But being able to be present allows me to see and be with the good. So when it goes back, it's like I'll still go back and I have something different to anchor on rather than just conceptualizing all of that negative tension that we feel. And the other thing is like the earlier we start, teaching, we grew up. I love that you had that experience. I didn't have that experience. Even though I went to karate, I still didn't have that experience. We didn't meditate in my karate class. That's a whole different experience for me. And like learning that, it's similar to why professional athletes can have children who become professional athletes. It's not just the genetic makeup of athleticism. Absolutely, that plays a considerable role in it, but they know how to get there.
Right.
People who were born in an entrepreneurial life have a very different relationship as they grow up to money and how that plays out. People who grow up, as I did, with the idea that you got to go to work, get a paycheck, retire, then die, like that's what you learn in those developmental periods of our life. That ingrains. This is why we think so fondly of it, because like there's so much that was new to us and we're learning, and it
Yes.
informs our emotional experience. So like being able to see that in practice in you, I think is great. I
Yeah, I'm
have to
sorry
have a
that you went
much
to the
more
Cobra Kai
intentional
dojo,
process,
though. My bad. No,
dude. I left
it's
because my sensei. I was like, when I was 10, I was probably 70 pounds, 60 pounds, and I was getting, I don't know, my green belt or whatever. And one of the things to test is like he kicked you in the stomach as hard as you can to see if you were ready and prepared. And like I didn't like it, so I quit after that.
damn. That seems a little advanced. Like what
Little
the?
little abusive.
Yeah.
But some people agree with it. But like to the point is now, because I grew up that way, my practice has to be much more intentional
Mm-hmm.
on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to. Now I've trained myself, right? So I've been training, I've been meditating. I don't meditate as much as I'd like to, but I also know I feel the effects of having meditated for like every day for 5 years. So now when the monkey brain is on, I can come back, but I still have to do certain things. Like every day I journal what my day is going to look like so I can stay focused on the things. I've set what priorities I have in my life. My priorities are my family, my health, my work in my community. So everything that I try to do has to fall within those buckets in some way or fashion, right? And if it doesn't, I tend to just not do it. What's that?
Yeah. You find something else to do. Yeah.
I find something else to do. I have an anchoring philosophy of honesty and compassion so that it keeps me thinking about how I'm acting right now. And am I violating my philosophy to live honestly with compassion, or am I living up to it? These types of things that I work towards. So it's an intentional effort in some form or fashion each and every day, but it's not a heavy effort anymore, right? Like those first couple of years, you sit and meditate, and it's just like, I don't know how I can do this for more than 2 minutes. And now, if I sit down and put the time aside, I could easily meditate for a half hour or an hour. Hopefully, I don't fall asleep. But, you know, so it's very much a training thing. And I think it's super important.
Yeah. No, again, it's like anything that we talk about, it's a skill, right? It's not a magic solution. It's not a boop, boop. It's not going to just fix everything automatically, but it does take practice and its benefits really do. I have a really close friend, and I worry about him sometimes because his negative self talk, the I can't do anything, uh, it reaches a level of toxicity where like other people isolate from you.
Mm.
Uh, and so you compound your feeling of unworthy loneliness because nobody wants to hear that all the time, and then kind of cycle into a deeper and darker space of it. And again, being present, it doesn't mean that you're perfect, but it does mean that you're aware and engaged in your moment. And it's scary, I think, sometimes to see people kind of go down that path. And so if anybody can take some of these practices, or even picking it up in small pieces, like we were talking about breathing exercises, to help bring you back in the moment, to turn off your fight or flight response, being aware of your body, doing body scans, like the finger touching
Mhm.
exercise, relaxing your toes all the way up to the top of your head. um when you're on that walk, being mindful of your surroundings, like sometimes we talk about pointing out the three things:
Yep. Three
exercise,
amazing things. Yeah.
three amazing things, exercise when you're out, even in eating, because a lot of anxious people
Dude,
eat.
mindful eating's hard, man.
It can be, it very much
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
Especially your workout machine over there. If you ever see Keith eat, he's more
I try.
interested in
I
in
am
getting
more
the
interested in
calories inside of
consuming the
his body.
calories than I
Yeah,
am enjoying the food. Yes. It
I need
is.
these calories inside of my body now.
But it's like I try every morning. This is because breakfast, the meal I eat that I've been eating for 2, 3, 4 years, it's basically the same thing with some iteration over time, is my favorite meal. I will eat it multiple times a day if I get a chance to. And I love it so much that by the end, I'm like, man, I wish I had more. Um, so I really try hard, especially in those that first half of the meal is like enjoy it. So I'm not thinking, because then I start thinking, oh, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. I don't want to be done. And that anxiety, like I don't want to be. It's just it's a microcosm. Like, and then we think about how we interact with people and the importance of presence in this moment, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a thing in coaching training where they talk about coaching mindset, and it's about being present with your client, not trying to anticipate what they're going to say next, and just allow whatever is going to come from this session to occur.
Mm.
And when we're engaging with other people in tense topics, maybe we're triggered. Now we're in this, oh, they're going to say this or they're going to go in that direction. Now I'm in an anxious state. And that anxious state prevents me from being able to just accept what comes and allow myself to be surprised in that, oh, I didn't expect that, right? Versus like, it's almost like we justify it too. It's like, I'd rather be prepared for what's to come so
Right.
I have a
Right.
proper response versus just allowing it to. And then you just respond. Like, just, maybe you don't have the magical words to come back to them. And that's cool too. Like you can just allow it to be. And it's so hard to do, but that's been one of the biggest, we'll call it a side effect of this journey for me, which was so personal, but it has affected my, like in a positive way, my ability to do the work that we do. So yeah, it's good.
It's an
Mindfulness.
amazing part of the journey, I think, and everything sets it up for everything else. I think that's part of my overall life philosophy, right? Like there's no you couldn't write that episode of Keith's life that led you to this point. But it did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have a podcast now about emotional intelligence and mindfulness and mental health. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah.
just such the that's the story. That's the whole point of all of these stories, is that we're all on our own pathway to it, but really they all kind of lead to the same place.
They certainly do. You're in the ground. It's a dire way to end the episode, but it's it's where it all goes.
This is the More in Common podcast. You can get in touch with Keith directly. Send your thoughts and comments about his morbid ending there. No, but we really do enjoy you guys. Thank you for being part of our audience, our family here at More in Common. We do appreciate any thoughts, comments, reviews you have. Check us out, moreincommonent.com. Like, subscribe, share, do all the things that help support the show. Somebody owes us an iTunes review. I think I might tell my mom she owes us an iTunes review. Something.
We need a new one. We haven't had a new one in a while.
We need a fresh one soon.
Yeah,
I think.
we have 46 of them, and they're all from the old iteration, so we need some new ones.
Well, I hope that somebody will break the ice. Be the first.
Be the first.
Thanks everybody for being with us. We'll see you next week. Have fun.
Have fun.